Thank you. Chair recognizes Ms. Dean, Mr. Dean, Mr. Dean, Ms. Dean, sorry.
Ms. Dean.
Ms. Dean.
How do you do? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the recognition, and I'm glad to be here in this august room. I just think that the title of this subcommittee hearings is really way off base. Instead of ATF's assault on the Second Amendment, when is enough enough? I think this should be called Defund and Dissolve the ATF. And I would put in a subtitle of When is enough gun violence and slaughter enough in this country for us to do something about it? I'm a bit perplexed by the posture of this hearing as I've been observing it. You know, for the better part of 2 years, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have made it a point to highlight the elevated rates of violent crime in this country, which we have suffered since 2020. They're not wrong to raise that issue. Analysis by the Brennan Center shows that the murder rate increased by roughly 30% and assaults increased by 10%. 75% of murders in 2020 were committed with a firearm. In the following year, 2021, nearly 49,000 Americans were killed by gun violence. Let's put that into perspective. Over the course of 20 years of war in both Afghanistan and Iraq, sadly, 7,000 U.S. service members were killed. In just 1 year, we lost 7 times that number of American civilians to gun violence. It is the ATF's job to help us address this uniquely American disaster. ATF is the federal law enforcement agency tasked with ensuring gun sellers and manufacturers that they are following the law. And it is the agency tasked with investigating and preventing firearms trafficking. And it is the agency's responsibility for tracing firearms found at crime scenes. The ATF's job essentially is saving lives from gun violence. And yet, some of my Republican colleagues have introduced legislation to abolish or defund, doing both, this critical agency. I am dumbfounded. No one who is serious about stemming the scourge of violent crime would make such an appeal. Mr. Wilcox, if you would you, let's take a look at a couple things. We had the ATF in front of a caucus, and the director of the ATF told us that they are struggling because they are severely underfunded and therefore cannot efficiently do their job to protect American lives. Could you speak to that part of ATF's burden?
I mean, ATF has been underfunded for years, and I think thankfully this Congress finally changed that last appropriation cycle where they were appropriated $1.7 billion, which was a 14% increase, and included a $75 million appropriation to build a new crime gun tracing facility out in Kansas, an event that the director was at, along with Senate Republican Senator Moran, showing the bipartisan nature of funding ATF when there's real desire to fight crime and prevent gun violence.
Yes, and I hope we don't undo that. Last year, ATF took action to reduce the prevalence of ghost guns, particularly difficult in my southeastern region of Pennsylvania, guns that lack a serial number and cannot be traced by law enforcement. Why are ghost guns a particular threat to our public safety?
Look, ghost gun parts and the companies that sell them was a kind of money-making endeavor to get around the gun safety laws and create a product that was untraceable, perfectly designed for gun traffickers or those who wish to avoid a background check or detection. It makes law enforcement's job incredibly difficult because when a ghost gun is recovered at a crime scene, you can't tell who made it, who sold it, who first purchased it, and so the trail can run dry in an investigation right off the bat, and you can't actually identify the gun trafficking channels that are funneling guns into our cities.
I thank you for that. Again, this was about ATF's assault on the Second Amendment. I wonder if any of the panelists, do you represent the ATF? Anybody here on behalf of the ATF? I find it strange that we would have such a hearing about ATF's alleged assault on the Second Amendment without bothering to ask.
Will the gentlelady yield?
No, I won't. Thank you. Without bothering to ask ATF. With that, I yield the remainder of my time.